Is your team's head football coach going to get fired this season?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here this Sunday, guys. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. We'll take a look at the ACC Hoops weekend slate on this episode. For ACC football coaches, there are some that are not necessarily on the hot seat, but have a lot of pressure this year. But Kenton Gibbs, there are definitely some on the hot seat as we head into this 2025 football season. I mean, how hot do you think the seat is on Mike Norvell at Florida State? Because like how much equity do you buy yourself after a 13-0 start to the season in 2023? Then you go 2-10 in 2024. Norvell actually has more losing seasons than winning seasons in his 5 years. You've got to say that seat is hot, right?
Oh, that seat is hot as fish grease, and here's why it's hot as fish grease. What is Florida State's ceiling, Donno? What's their absolute ceiling?
Maybe probably about 8 wins, I would say.
No. I'm saying, what is their ceiling as a program? As a program, you would say the best that Florida State can possibly do is this, and this is what the history books show us.
National championship,
correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. At the peak, at the apex of Norvell's seasons, did he give you a national championship?
No.
Now, granted, we can make the argument he wasn't allowed to. We can make that argument. Yeah. And it's a salient argument. I'm not mad at that. But here's the problem. Outside of Norvell 2-10, what was Florida State's floor? What was their basement?
I mean, I don't know. Their basement would probably be like 3rd or 4th place in the ACC. That's what it should be for them.
So, and I think that the worst that they ever were was what? Probably under Taggart when they were what, like 5-4 wins. Taggart never had a 2-win season.
No.
Taggart never had that. And that was the worst Florida State in my lifetime. Correct me if I'm wrong, Donald. I don't think we've ever seen Florida State be worse than it was under Taggart. So
outside of last year, sure.
Outside of last year. So you have not reached the ceiling. Your apex, your peak was not the ceiling, and your floor was lower than the basement. You're damn right. The seat is hot. And when I tell you that seat is hot, I mean that seat is hot enough. You know when you press the broil button on your stove by accident, you're like, well, why does my stove look kind of funny? And you open it, you're like, oh my God, my face. Like, it's that hot for Norvell right now because, again, you objectively, despite the reasoning, you objectively have not reached the peak, but you have lowered the floor. Oh, right. Tallahassee ain't going to play that too much longer.
Well, and it makes sense because one of the ways like you would measure where a coach is on a hot seat, it's not only results, but expectations, right? And as you outlined, outside of Clemson and maybe Miami, I mean, in Florida State, you could argue maybe has even the highest expectations out of those 3 programs, depending on who you talk to, because some of the other coaches we're going to talk about who are on the hot seat heading into next year do not coach at programs where the expectations are as high as Florida State. So he's got to be up there, Norvell. Now, for Mike Norvell, who you could argue maybe the hottest seat in the entire ACC, what would be the magic number of wins this year, Kenton, that would keep his job or at least keep him off the hot seat? Now, I asked Locked On Seminoles host Brian Smith. I texted him earlier, and he said probably 7, at least 7 wins is what keeps Mike Norvell's job for the following year. Obviously, 7 wins does not meet the Florida State standard, but coming off of 2 wins, you could understand why that number might be 7 and not 9 or 10.
Well, I think that there are 2 different numbers that we're talking about right now. The number that keeps his job, the number that cools his seat off. If he gets 7, he comes back next year in the exact same position. hey, show us something or you're gone. Show us something.
Right.
Show us life. Show us improvement or you're gone. And the problem with that is this. If he wins 7 this year, he can't win 7 next year. If he wins 7 in this upcoming season, he's going to need 8 or 9 a year after that to say, hey, we're trending in the right direction. And I have shown you all in the past that if you give me time, I can build and trend and get you to that apex or damn close to it. So with that in mind, I would definitely say 7 saves his job. 9+ gets the seat cooled down. 9+ people are like, all right, okay, put the pitchforks away. Put the pitchforks away. We'll be all right with Norvell.
I agree. I think if you get 7 wins, you save your job, but you're on double secret probation, right? Anything better than that, you say 9. I say probably even 8 would probably cool the seat off. But we're on the same page with that one. And again, the expectations at Florida State make that seat extra hot. But there are a couple of other coaches, Kenton, who I think are on legit hot seats in the ACC heading into this year. Both of the programs in Virginia. Tony Elliott at UVA. I mean, that team started 4-1 last year and still found a way not to be bowl eligible, going 5-7 last season. Elliott's previous 2 years at UVA were 3 wins apiece. I mean, just not good enough results. And I know UVA does not have the high expectations that Florida State does, but if you're not even reaching bowl eligibility, I think his seat is super hot entering this year. You know, they fired Bronco Mendenhall for putting up similar and better results. So how long are they going to tolerate Tony Elliott? And then I would say Brent Pry with Virginia Tech, Kenton. I mean, the first year when he took over, you give him some grace. He went 3-8 the first year, but then 7-6 the second year with bigger expectations for the third season in 2024, regressed and went 6-7 this past year. So I think his seat could get hot. Now, you know, with Virginia Tech, their coaching history, it's basically been 3 guys in the last 45 years, having a great one there for so many years in Frank Beamer. And then, they obviously Justin Fuente didn't give them Frank Beamer results, so he got fired, but they were pretty patient with Fuente. He got into the 6th year, Kenton. And before we talk about these Virginia coaches, I looked back at the Frank Beamer results over like 40 years in Blacksburg. His were from 1992 on, because they were bad when he first took over, but from 92 on, his worst season was 7 wins, was Frank Beamer's worst season there at Virginia Tech. So, I mean, the standards used to be high there. We'll see how much more patience they give to Brent Pry.
Here's the thing. Virginia Tech both of these schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech, lay in hotbeds of talent. Like, nobody can deny that the DMV, the Newport News area, all that talent, immense talent in that area. Can you build something attractive enough for that talent to come to? Can you build something attractive enough to say, hey, Caleb Williams, you don't need to go all the way out to Norman, Oklahoma to do good things. Come on over. Come right on over to Blacksburg. It's fun. You'll love it here, all that good stuff. It's very important that these coaches win. But I'll tell you this, Donno, I don't think that these coaches' seats are an equal level of hot. I don't think so at all. I think the Tony Elliott seat, that thing is scorching. If you look at Tony Elliott's been a head coach for 3 years there, correct?
Correct.
A total of what? 11 wins over 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. Yeah.
You're averaging less than 4 wins a year. I don't care who your school is. I don't care if you are in the pits, the depths of hell in terms of Power 4 schools. Nobody is going to give you 4 years to put up 4 wins apiece per year or less, which right now that's where his average sits. And then there's a difference between that extremely hot situation, and I think Pry's seat is warm. I think it's warm.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, hey, this is bubbling, this is scorching. I think he could lose his job at the end of the season if they have a bad season. 1,000%. They go 4 wins or something like that, he's gone. But I think a solid 8 wins, 7 wins, really even 7 wins, I think is like, we're not happy, but we'll put the pitchforks away. For Tony Elliott, I don't see anything under 7 or I don't see anything under 8 really that tells you put the pitchfork away. Because even if he gets 7, let's think about this from the clearest way possible. Even if he gets 7 this year, Donno, You're looking at 7 wins. The totality of this: 3 wins, 3 wins, 5 wins, 7 wins. People are still going to say, is 7 the apex? Is that the best we can do? Is this our ceiling under him? So you're still walking in the next year like, if you have another bad season, you're cooked. As opposed to Pry, if he bangs out 7 or 8 this year, I think he's guaranteed another year beyond that to where he can go 6 or 6, whatever, and not be gone. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's just my opinion.
Well, let's talk when we come back about seats that might be warm, and also like coaches who are not on the hot seat but have a lot of pressure for this coming season. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on Locked On ACC. Folks, PrizePicks. You want to have that PrizePick app in front of you during that big game on Sunday. I know I will. Big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' stat projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. I think that's a safe one. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board. I'm selecting more for Travis Kelce on his receiving yards. Obviously, I'm selecting more than half a yard for Patrick Mahomes. So right there, that could be a winning selection. What I love most, fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you could split 1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs hosts Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Cane. So everything NC State, Miami, we have you covered on our other shows, free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. Kenton, anyone else we could look at and say, hey, the seat may not be like scorching the way it is for Tony Elliott or for Mike Norvell, but any other coaches you're on the lookout for, ACC football coaches, where the seat is warm, it can get hot pretty quick?
Oh, 2 of the longest tenure guys in the conference are both on seats that are at least warm by the calmest estimations. And I'd say that's in 2 of my favorite guys, Pat Narduzzi and Dave Norn. Those 2 are both on seats that it's getting a little warm now. The water may not be boiling yet, but it's hot enough to make some grits. It's hot enough to make some oatmeal in that thing because both of those teams have had some historical highs under, and I know NC State fans do not want to hear historical highs when he hasn't won an ACC championship in Doran. However, objectively speaking, he is the winningest coaching program history. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's just a factual statement. So with that in mind, what you are looking at here is a situation where he's raised the floor. He has not raised the ceiling, but he's raised the floor, and now it's getting to the point where people are getting antsy about the ceiling. And last year was a year of regression that had more expectations than ever. And then we go up to Pat Narduzzi, the last Atlantic coach to ever win an ACC championship. Come on down, brother. Last year, after starting as hot as fish grease, you absolutely sputtered down the stretch in a way that we haven't seen since, what was it? It was the coach from Syracuse. Help me out. Syracuse's last coach.
Dino Babers.
Babers was the last team to start out that hot and finish that cold. I believe they started.
It was 7 up and then 6 down, right? They won 7 and lost 6. Like, geez.
And this is what I mean by, we have not seen that type of collapse in quite some time because, again, Pitt came out early this season looking dominant, looking phenomenal. They whooped on a Syracuse team that then went on and had a ton of success beyond what they could have done. So, those 2 seats are not hot. They're not scorching. They're both getting a little warm. They're both getting to the point where it's like, hey, now it's only so long you can ride out that ACC championship, brother.
Now, the seat is not hot in Miami, but does anyone have more pressure to win big than Mario Cristobal, because, again, obviously, you can only criticize a 10-win season so much last year, but Miami found a way to have like the worst 10-win season because, ultimately they didn't play for an ACC championship or a college football playoff. And, I was kind of wondering what things would look like last year, losing Cam Ward. And, obviously Carson Beck doesn't directly replace Cam Ward, but Miami couldn't have done much better in finding Cam Ward's replacement than they did. And the roster's very talented. The defense let Miami down last year. The offense was championship level. The defense was far from it. So, for Mario Cristobal, like what's your next act after a 10-win season where it was good but not good enough? I think there's a lot of pressure this year. Now, I think it would take a lot. Like Mario Cristobal, to me, is not anywhere close to the hot seat, but there's going to be a lot of disappointed folks in South Florida if they don't play for an ACC championship this year at the very least.
I think his seat is cool. It's not
Yeah.
cold. I think the only cold seat in the ACC is down there in Dallas. I think that seat is cold as ice. It doesn't matter what Lashley does.
Lashley.
SMU ain't moving on. However, I think that this seat is cool. It's a moment where 10 wins is 10 wins is 10 wins. However, I talk about this a lot. There are about 10, maybe 12 schools where winning 8 games a year is not enough. Miami is one of those schools. It just is. Okay. Miami has seen some lows that were ugly. We all remember the Randy Shannon era and all that good stuff. It wasn't pretty. But with that in mind, even through then, they still were consistently making bowl games and whatnot. They still were. So I think for if we're talking in terms of Cristobal and what he needs to do this year, I would say 7 heats up his seat. 8 with the brutal schedule that they got. 8, you know what I mean? That's what you're about. Hey, that's what we expect the coach to do. 9 and up, his seat is going to reach that cold stage. It's going to start to hit that stage where it's like, hey, you can get you a cold one out of there and you'll be all right.
Now, what about and again, not this is another one definitely not on the hot seat, but what about the pressure for Dabo Swinney? And I think he thrives under pressure, right? I mean, last year, you could argue Clemson probably overachieved a little bit, getting to the ACC championship, winning it, college football playoff, and the team on paper for 2025 looks better and more experienced, and you get more continuity, of course, with Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik both back. So, I mean, to me, like Clemson, they disappointed a lot of folks winning 9 games in the regular season last year. I think if they don't win 10 or more, then that's going to be a disappointment there this year.
Oh, absolutely. But I want to say something about Dabo. When you win multiple national championships, you got a lifer seat at almost any school. Clemson is one of those schools, they were not a traditional blue blood to the point where he's won multiple national championships. He's going to get to decide when he leaves. He's still there. But the other side of that coin, the flip side of that lifer seat, you build perpetual pressure. I want to reference what Joe Paterno did up at Penn State, right? And scandal and all that aside, right? Just focusing on what happened on the field. If we're talking about that alone, did Joe Pa ever have a year where people were like, 6 wins is okay. 7 wins is okay? No, because he had taken Penn State to such phenomenal heights that at that point, when you take a team to heights that they had never been to before at a consistent level, all of a sudden it's like, hey, listen, we get it. We're not going to get rid of you. We know we can't, but you're going to be a guy that is expected. The expectancy of your fans then raises to, I need to be at or near double-digit wins every year. I need to be 9-ish plus, which they got to last year. I believe they had 10 going into the ACC championship, if I'm not incorrect there. And then they beat SMU and played competitively, play one of the more competitive playoff games against Texas. So, this is a situation where Dabo's seat is not hot, but you're right. There is pressure on that seat, even if it is cold.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one, when you were talking about Joe Paterno, you also had me thinking in conference. It was the same thing with Bobby Bowden at Florida State.
Yes.
I mean, he put that program on the map. They were not nationally relevant before Coach Bowden got there, which was like early 70s. And it got to the point where it's like when Bobby Bowden, like late in his career, had some kind of down seasons, like, we can't fire him, but like he raised his own standards so high. It's like he can call his own shot, but there were some disappointing years at the end.
He can call his own shot, but we need a home run sooner or later, damn it. We would like one.
Yeah.
We would like one, and that's the space that Dabo is in. He's in that space where he can call his own shot, but they're expecting him to call one out of the park soon.
Coming up next, let's take a look at the ACC basketball schedule for this weekend. Duke Blue Devils, are they going to improve to 13-0 in conference? They've got a little bit of a test this weekend. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. I already know you guys are keeping it locked to FanDuel. Folks, you're looking on the action at the big game. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, sure, we all like Patrick Mahomes for that, right? I like Saquon Barkley first touchdown. I got a feeling about that one. Or even betting the coin toss. I like tails. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. So, Kenton, for the past couple of weeks, we've been saying, hey, is Duke going to go undefeated in ACC play this year? They're 12-0, and, they're going to be on the road this Saturday, 6:30 p.m. against a Clemson Tigers team that is 10-2 in the ACC and could challenge them. Now, you say could, because when Duke is on their game, Kenton, they're unstoppable just about. So, could this be maybe the weekend where Duke has a little bit of a letdown and maybe Clemson at home can take advantage?
I mean, that's definitely possible, but I don't see it happening. Donno, do you know what happened to Clemson in the last game that they played?
No, what happened?
Multiple overtime loss to Georgia Tech.
Oof.
They looked ahead of Georgia Tech to Duke. And all of a sudden, they did not win that game. And you know what happens when teams look ahead and lose one? They typically lose the one they were looking ahead to as well.
That's right.
That one loss turns into two, and two turns into three, and so on and so forth. Duke let themselves, or I'm sorry, not Duke. Clemson let themselves be caught in the trap of, oh yeah, we're salivating up for Duke. And of course, Coach Brad Brownell would never say that. He'll always, oh yeah, we were, the shots just didn't fall, things just didn't go our way, woo-doo-woo-woo. But objectively speaking, they are a superior team to Georgia Tech. I don't think there's a world where that's not the case. And so Georgia Tech comes out on top here by simply plugging away, doing little things, and again, focusing on the food that's in front of them. Mm-hmm. Clemson, on the other hand, play with theirs, lost, and I think they lose this next game as well because, again, you need to be confident. You need to be right. You need to be on a good note going into that game against a team that looks like objectively the second best team in the nation at worst.
Yes. At worst is right.
You can't go into that game licking your wounds from the last one and think you'll be okay.
Other games on the slate on Saturday, 1 p.m. Virginia Tech on the road at Notre Dame. Notre Dame actually helped Miami get their first ACC win. Miami at 2 o'clock is going to play Louisville on the road. That's going to be a really tough one. Looking for their second straight ACC win. That's going to be tough for Miami. 3:15. Boston College at Syracuse, Pitt at North Carolina at 4 o'clock. That's an interesting matchup. Pitt 5-6 in conference, North Carolina 6-5. Cal hosting Wake Forest at 5 p.m. Georgia Tech taking on Virginia on the road at 5:30. We mentioned Duke at Clemson at 6:30 and NC State at Stanford at 7. I'm sure you're going to be watching that one. And which other games outside of the Duke game really jump out to you?
Donno, please leave me alone asking, am I going to watch NC State basketball? Okay. I'm protecting my peace in 2025. And part of that is not looking at things that take away joy from me. I only watch things that bring me joy. And I'm going to leave that at that. But I'll tell you what, in all seriousness, that UNC Pitt game, I believe you mentioned earlier, I think that could be a very interesting one in terms of not just because of a situation of, oh, well, who's in that best of the rest group after you get past Duke and then Louisville and Clemson? Who's in that best of the rest group? It's also for seeding in the ACC tournament, because a lot of people don't realize this. The ACC tournament, the better seeding you get, the more buys you get to a very high degree. So this head-to-head matchup could weigh heavily into that, as both of these teams are middle of the pack, but both have the talent to kind of jump up from where they are now.
Well, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to make Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolfpack. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Canes. Make sure you check out all the great shows along this network, and have an awesome weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.